Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. It is not right what is going on in America right now. It is not right. I mean, all of it. The public health disaster that we could have mitigated if we had a better president and better leadership. The economic devastation that tens of millions of Americans are now facing. But specifically, the way this country is now failing to honor with dignity and grace the more than 62,000 men and women we have lost. We have all seen the stories about the overwhelming number of fatalities. At one funeral home in Brooklyn, New York, 50 decomposing bodies were found on ice inside 4 trucks, including rental trucks from U-Haul. The funeral director said they were put there because he had no more room in his chapel. I ran out of space, he said. Bodies are coming out of our ears. A cemetery worker, also in Brooklyn, says he is struggling to keep up with the onslaught of bodies.
Sometimes, Ali Maoud arrives as early as 3 a.m. and stays late just to lessen the load for the next day.
15 hours a day, and it's very excruciating.
People tasked with burying the dead cannot keep up with the sheer number of deaths. Because the virus is so contagious and so deadly, many families have not been able to say goodbye to their loved ones in person at the hospital. And they often cannot have traditional funerals or sit shiva or otherwise come together to collectively mourn because of physical distancing rules. It's just a horrible thing to go through. And then come the costs. At a time when many are suddenly out of work, in New Jersey, where 460 deaths were recorded today, a son could not afford the funeral bills for his parents who died 3 days apart. In Chicago, the family of a nurse who contracted the virus had to set up a GoFundMe page to cover her funeral expenses.
She gave what we taught a human touch, a mother's touch. And that she did for everybody. We're all just dumbfounded that this happened.
Here's the thing. It doesn't have to be like this. There's a very simple thing the federal government, our government, can do right now to help. They could step in and pay for burials for those who have fallen. But Donald Trump has not done it. He has not released the money. Now, in the past, after disasters like Hurricane Katrina and Superstorm Sandy, the government has stepped in to cover funeral costs. After 3 hurricanes in 2017, as ProPublica reports, FEMA paid out about $2,700 per approved application. So far, we've lost more than 62,000 men and women to the virus. If the federal government wanted to provide that same amount of money, $2,700 to each of the families of the deceased, so they don't have to go scrounging on GoFundMe to cover funeral costs, it would cost the federal government around $170 million. That's it. At a time when we are spending literally trillions of dollars, $500 billion for big business, tens of billions to the airline industry, tens of millions for the luxury hotel company that owns the Ritz-Carlton in Atlanta. 2 weeks ago, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, both of New York, were calling on the government to step up and do this very, very simple, obvious thing.
The least we can do is help families bury their loved ones in the most impacted communities in America. It is the very least we can do. It is the very core, basic measure of human dignity. And in the richest country in the world, we should be able to allow people to bury their loved ones in dignity.
The least we can do. It is the least we can do, but Trump will not do it. He doesn't need to go through Congress. I want to be clear here. He just needs to authorize FEMA to release the money. As former FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate told ProPublica, FEMA does not have the independent ability to turn on the programs at will. It has to come from Trump. In fact, approximately 30 states and territories have requested the funding, but Trump will not free up the money. Now, the president is refusing to take this very simple action as a small grace towards the citizens of this nation. It's unconscionable. And that small little bit of inaction, of utter cold-heartedness, it says everything you need to know about the way he has navigated this crisis from the beginning. As the bodies pile up at funeral homes and the cemetery workers become overwhelmed and the death toll crosses that of the Vietnam War, the president is rage-tweeting in unhinged fashion in the middle of the night. And this afternoon saying things like this.
I don't think anybody's done a better job with testing, with ventilators, with all of the things that we've done. And our death totals, our numbers per million people are really very, very strong. We're very proud of the job we've done.
He just said, the President of the United States just said today, our deaths per million are really very strong. More than 62,000 Americans gone. Thousands more every day, day after day after day after day. He's very proud of the job he's done. They just do not seem to think Americans dying en masse as the federal government looks on is that big a deal. In fact, there's a whole group of the president's supporters who just come out and say, no biggie.
Many people who are dying both here and around the world were on their last legs anyway, and I don't want to sound callous about that.
Oh, you're going to get hold on. You're going to get hammered for that.
I mean, a simple man tells the truth.
Simple man tells the truth. Last legs anyway. On Sunday, the Washington Post published a story breaking down what Trump had said in 13 hours of his coronavirus briefings. And while he spent 45 minutes of that praising himself and his administration, he spent only 4.5 minutes. 4.5 minutes out of 13 hours expressing condolences for the victims of the virus. What is happening right now in America is a catastrophe. It's a nightmare. It is cause for mass grief and for national mourning, for flags to be flown at half-mast. Yet the families of the victims have watched their federal government fail them. They have suffered this horrible loss, often without being able to say goodbye or properly mourn. And now, amidst the worst economic contraction since the Great Depression, they are being deprived of the money many need to give some last bit of dignity to their loved ones. And that is not right.